Oh my God, y'all! I think I'm frozen like that song.
Is it the first or the second version?
I know, right? Or the third, or the fourth.
Are you frozen with Takesha or on fire?
I'm frozen in San Francisco right now.
Oh, that's the one she hasn't released yet. It'll come out later.
As long as you guys can see me moving around, then I'm good.
It's okay, Tony. I freeze all the time. And always, it's like the worst possible facial expression. You know, you're like...
Actually, I don't hate mine, but it's not one that I usually make.
That's what I was gonna say. If you want to make sure that you're not frozen, and like just try and keep your movements really small, and like see, this is what's good. Like I can keep my microphone in front of my face, and then that way it's like if I'm frozen, no one can see that. No one can see that I haven't moved. You know, whatever. All right, let's get going. Ben's got a bedtime.
As do I.
As do I.
Madonna forever. Madonna forever. Madonna forever. Madonna forever.
You're listening to MLVC, the Madonna podcast, your place for all things Madonna, Louise, Veronica Ciccone. I actually almost got myself in a twist there. I forgot what I was saying.
It's been a long weekend.
It has. Hi, everybody. It's Liberty.
Hey, guys. It's Tony, and I'm frozen.
I am not frozen. I'm just tired, and my name is Ben. Hello, everyone.
And hey, everybody. It's Stefan. Welcome to another episode of MLVC. So, before we begin, I wanted to give a very small disclaimer. In case you weren't aware, this podcast is not and never has been officially endorsed by or has been associated with Madonna. The views of this show are our own and do not reflect the views of one Madonna, Louise Veronica Ciccone. And I say all of this because today we are planning to discuss Madonna's younger brother, Christopher Ciccone, who just passed away after a battle with cancer. And today on Christopher's Instagram account was a story that said, "Dear friends, if you received an invite for a live stream of a celebration of life for Christopher, please ignore it. His family and I know nothing about it. Thank you." So to all of our listeners, if you are here watching this live, thanks for joining us. And second, as a listener of this show should know, we do not trade in salacious gossip. We are not here to dishonor Madonna or members of her family. This podcast is about celebrating her creative contributions to this world, and to the people who have been a part of those projects. So one of those people just happens to be her brother, Christopher. And for today's show, we are planning to discuss the many times that Christopher worked with his sister in an artistic capacity, because Christopher has been such a part of her legacy, and you can't sort of talk about Madonna in the 80s and early 90s without having had Christopher's involvement in some way, shape, or form. So having him pass away recently, I think, was a sort of a defining marker for her. We did sort of go back and forth as to, like, should we talk about this? Is this something that people would be interested in? But I just think because he was such a part of her life and a part of her career, that it just makes sense to sort of talk about it and talk about how he helped her as her star rose in the sky. Tony, I was hoping you could give the bio for Christopher, because he's pretty accomplished.
Yeah.
Did I send you the bio?
Yeah, you did. You did. I lost my screen. So talk amongst yourselves for 2 seconds.
Lovely to see all of your beautiful faces. Thank you for showing up, everyone who's watching and listening right now. It's a Sunday night. Middle of
Everybody
August.
is sending hearts to your statement in the chat.
Oh, thanks. Well, and also
that was really well said. Really well said.
I would be remiss if we didn't also commemorate that tomorrow, October 14th, commemorates 1 year since Madonna's Celebration Tour opened in London. How fast that went by. Like, it feels like it was just yesterday. We were all like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it does. It actually feels like a lifetime to me, because thinking about it, having been a year ago that she said like set off on that tour. And the shows that I saw were middle and end of that, right? But to me, those seem so long ago that then I think, wait, in October, that feels like it must have been like a millennia ago. But
yeah.
Wow.
I feel like we were so young, just like watching the live stream, thinking like, oh my God, this is a real thing, and we're gonna go see it. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was very young, nothing really mattered to me. So
I know, right?
it was
I'm gonna go ahead and give Christopher's bio,
Yes, please.
so we can kind of wrap up his career. And, for anyone that doesn't know how extensive his achievements have been, Christopher Gerard Ciccone was an American visual artist, interior decorator, designer in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. He was the younger brother of singer Madonna. Christopher Ciccone began his professional career as a dancer with Le Groupe de la Place Royale. He was a dancer for his sister Madonna early in her career. Eventually, he became the art director for Madonna's Blond Ambition world tour in 1990. He was also the tour director for the inimitable tour, The Girlie Show, in 1993. Ciccone also directed music videos for Dolly Parton and Tony Bennett, among others. In 2008, he released the New York Times bestselling book, Life with My Sister Madonna. And in 2012, he launched a footwear line, the Ciccone Collection. Sadly, Christopher passed away from pancreatic cancer on October 4th, 2024, at the age of 63.
Yeah, it was sort of great to be able to read everything that he did and all that he accomplished. And I love that he was so involved with Madonna. She posted a really great tribute to Christopher on Instagram, and we thought we'd have a read through of that. Liberty, would you do the honors?
I would be happy to. My brother Christopher is gone. He was the closest human to me for so long. It's hard to explain our bond, but it grew out of an understanding that we were different, and society was going to give us a hard time for not following the status quo. We took each other's hands, and we danced through the madness of our childhood. In fact, dance was a kind of superglue that held us together. Discovering dance in our small Midwestern town saved me, and then my brother came along, and it saved him too. My ballet teacher, also named Christopher, created a safe space for my brother to be gay, a word that was not spoken or even whispered where we lived. When I finally got the courage to go to New York to become a dancer, my brother followed. And again, we took each other's hands and we danced through the madness of New York City. We devoured art and music and film like hungry animals. We were in the epicenter of all these things exploding. We danced through the madness of the AIDS epidemic. We went to funerals and we cried, and we went dancing. We danced together on stage in the beginning of my career, and eventually he became the creative director of many tours. When it came to good taste, my brother was the Pope, and you had to kiss the ring to get his blessing. We defied the Roman Catholic Church, the police, the moral majority, and all authority figures that got in the way of artistic freedom. My brother was right by my side. He was a painter, a poet, and a visionary. I admired him. He had impeccable taste and a sharp tongue, which he sometimes used against me, but I always forgave him. We soared the highest heights together and floundered in the lowest lows. Somehow we always found each other again, and we held hands, and we kept dancing. The last few years have not been easy. We did not speak for some time, but when my brother got sick, we found our way back to each other. I did my best to keep him alive as long as possible. He was in so much pain towards the end. Once again, we held hands. We closed our eyes and we danced together. I'm glad he's not suffering anymore. There will never be anyone like him. I know he's dancing somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know about the three of you or any of the listeners, but I remember when I read that on Instagram, I was walking on the streets of New York City with MLVC podcast hairstylists Michael Angelou and Jason Lee, and I literally just started to well up with tears because I was like, she's so not emotional about, she's very private. We all know that. She's very private about her family, and I just thought that was such a beautiful tribute, and because a lot of people didn't think she was going to post right away. I mean, that was really soon after he had died. And
Right.
I think people were assuming it was going to be a week or something. And it was like the next day. And I just thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. It's hard to read that, I think. Just considering all of the input he had creatively and how much he shaped what we love about Madonna. And that she used the metaphor of dance just throughout, sort of woven in what she wrote about him, was just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved it. And I'm glad that like the dancing was such a moment for them, and that it was so important to both of them and such a key thing to help them. I thought that was great. Before we dive into some of the other contributions that Christopher participated with Madonna on, I wanted to highlight a small section from his book, Life with My Sister Madonna. And Ben, I was hoping you could read that.
The Lanesborough Hotel, London, England, 8:30 a.m., September 25th, 1993. The alarm rings in a low-key British way. I get up, peer through a gap in the thick purple silk drapes, and the sun glimmers back at me. Luckily, the weather's fine. After all, this is the UK, land of rain and fog. The Girlie Show tour, which I designed and directed, opens tonight, and we don't want the crowd getting drenched before the show even begins. We, the royal we, Madonna and me, my sister and I, she who is still fast asleep in a mahogany four-poster bed in her suite adjoining mine. The royal we, so fitting for a woman who is sometimes a royal pain in my ass. Although Buckingham Palace, the Queen of England's residence, is just across the road, in my estimation and that of millions of fans, she is the real queen of the universe. Madonna Louise Veronica Ciccone, my elder sister by 27 months, who, just 11 years after the release of her first record, is now one of the most famous women in the world. I eat an orange. No big English breakfast for me, no matter how much I like it. Otherwise, I'll probably throw up when Madonna and I take our scheduled 6-mile jog at 11, just as we did yesterday, just as we will do tomorrow, and on every other day during the tour. Schedule, in fact, is my sister's middle name. Up at 9 in the morning, in bed by 11 at night, with every hour in between planned by her as rigidly as any military campaign. With her mania for making lists, for running her life according to a timetable. In another incarnation, Madonna could easily have run a prison, directed airport traffic, or been a 5-star general. Sadly for her, though, her nights can't be structured or played out according to a strict schedule, because she is an insomniac and rarely sleeps more than 3 hours a night.
I love the contrast between sort of the public persona that we know of Madonna and the little glimpses that Christopher shows in his book. And I think that that's sort of what I loved about the comparison of reading her tribute to him and then having the contrast of his book, where they're brother and sister. And if you have a sibling, you sort of know the push and pull that goes on with that. And some brothers and sisters are close, some brothers and sisters are not, or brothers and brothers, or sisters and sisters, like it's family, it's complicated. And I, when Christopher passed away, I immediately went to listening to Keep It Together, because I've always thought of him when I heard that song, just because he was such a mainstay. Like he was, other than Marty in Truth or Dare, I feel like Christopher was like the brother, you know, like you knew him more than any of her other family members because he'd been with her since the beginning. And so whenever I heard of Keep It Together, I just always thought of them because they were such a duo in Truth or Dare, you know, like they were sort of just like hanging out and going through things. And obviously the infamous scene from Truth or Dare when he, you know, they say that you can't do the masturbation scene tonight, otherwise you'll be arrested. It's the two of them, and it's almost as if like she thinks he's teasing her and just pulling a joke that, oh, there's no way this is true. Chris is just pulling my leg.
But he's goading her 100%.
Oh yeah.
Playing it up.
As an eldest sibling, you can tell when a younger one is trying to gin you up. And yeah, I'll never forget seeing that. And I'm like, she fell for that. She wasn't getting arrested. Come on now.
And it makes a good movie, right?
Oh, it does. Legit.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of moments that, I mean, we could start chronologically from the very beginning and go forward. I mean, obviously, I think the first time any of us would have ever noticed Christopher publicly would have been as a dancer of hers. You know, he was a backup, as you can see in Liberty's backdrop from the Lucky Star video, but he was also on stage with her. I mean, I was personally too young to be able to see her in those early days of the club scene in New York City. I did, when I was in New York just this past weekend, I did go see, we stopped, but we were doing a little mini MLVC walking tour, me, Michelangelo, and Jason Lee. And we were like, let's go visit some of the old haunts of Madonna, which easier said than done, because basically all of the haunts that Madonna went to are now like luxury high rises, and they don't exist anymore. So like the Roxy nightclub is condos. We went to 30 East 21st Street, which is the former site of Danceteria. I posted a picture of it. It was kind of just fun to sort of like walk down that street and know, wow, 40 years ago or longer, you know, Madonna would have been walking down this with her jelly bracelets and her tasseled hair and getting ready to perform. I don't know, what do you think about, like, when did you start noticing Christopher? I think for me, it was Truth or Dare. Like maybe I had sort of seen him around, but I don't think I was aware of who he was until that movie.
No, I didn't. I don't think I even knew, even in Truth or Dare, like I think it would have taken me probably 2 watches or so to really get that. I mean, even though she does say, right, and then he's there sort of in the cemetery scene and all of these other scenes that he's in. But I remember it was very late when I realized that he was in the Lucky Star video. I was just like, oh, wait, what? And then that caused a whole other sort of, I mean, it might have been almost 2000 before I realized that.
Oh, wow.
So late.
Yeah, no, I remember the first time I saw him, it was before the Lucky Star video, and outside of MTV, you didn't really see Madonna on TV unless she was performing, right? So I saw her on American Bandstand doing Holiday.
Oh,
and
sure.
he was there. And I remember seeing him and thinking that's got to be like maybe her cousin or something. You know what I mean? That's like, I made up some story in my head. But then I remember a couple years later when she was in you know, in the middle of True Blue and her hair was short and blonde, there was a photo of them together holding hands. And it was in a People magazine or a tabloid or something. It was like, is Madonna stepping out on Sean Penn? They didn't know who he was. They thought he was her boyfriend or something. And I'm like, look at their faces. They look exactly, especially because she had her big eyebrows and the mole then. So it was like, those two people are related, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then when I bought the Like a Prayer 12-inch and I saw that he was the artist, I was like, oh, wow, he's not just a dancer, but he was commissioned to, you know, do the cover art, and which was really, it was a very telling move because before that, all of Madonna's cover art was her face, right?
Except for everybody, obviously.
Except for everybody. But, you know, she didn't have the luxury of saying, no, I want my brother's artwork to be the cover of this album, as opposed to the studio head saying like, we want you and a bustier right here,
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
and then, then seeing him in Truth or Dare, I realized that like, he's got to be very important to her if these are the clues that I have,
Interesting.
I think
See,
maybe
well-
we had because we had seen that beautiful photograph that Herb Ritts had taken of her whole family.
The family, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Life magazine, I remember that.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, but I don't think it was like a big call out of, oh, here's Christopher. This is the guy from the Lucky Star video.
Right.
Well, he first popped into my awareness, clearly her brother from the Brows in Lucky Star. But I always go back to the Advocate interview where she outed him, right? And that was such a linchpin as a fan in the brother-sister relationship and then the professional relationship, that he was dancing for her, he was creating art for her. And, that was on the backside of Blonde Ambition, where she had given interviews and talked about Christopher's work. But then that interview, you're like, oh, that totally changes like the sort of symbiosis of this relationship. And you're like, oh, she's got her little gay brother under her wing. Like, she 100% is that allyship. But also then, I mean, I know that the family and he didn't react to it as positively at the time. Hello, it was 1991. Those of us who were there then could tell you what kind of trauma that would be. But but for those of us who were not experiencing that trauma and were seeing it from afar in the interview, and then sort of like how that recontextualized his entire presence throughout her career, it was like, oh, I mean, he was thus he immediately became in that same, like with Keith and Herb Ritts, and like boom, like Christopher was just as important and influential and part of the sort of Madonna's version of Andy Warhol's The Factory, because that's what they were. They were sort of like her extended symbiotic team that sort of helped her figure out what this was going to be and what it was going to be in the larger world. And so we can't, it's like a complicated thing because they were siblings, and so she outed him in a national magazine, and I'm sure that was one of their first really big, like, how could you do this to me?
Sure.
You could just imagine those feisty, I live with an Italian family. Let me tell you, when they want to fuss, they fuss. So I can just imagine what it was like at the Ciccone Christmas that year. But, looking back on it, but even at the time, it's not even looking back on it. In 91, I was just like, holy crap. Like, it just totally, and I don't think she was revealing it to buttress her sort of like allyship in any way. I mean, we didn't use the word allyship back then, right? So, but it clicked, and it put him in this sort of like spot that you maybe didn't really think of. And then, that article comes out, and then you see Truth or Dare and what a prominent place he has in that. And it makes even more sense at that point. And it's just, yeah. And such a talented artist. We got to mention that too. Like,
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I that's what I think was always so funny, is because I was watching a few interviews that he had given after the book came out, and he was sort of revealing how he was annoyed that he was known as her dresser, back when he first started working with her. And I mean, in my head, I get that, like as a brother-sister thing, here's your sister who's becoming this huge star, and you're just helping her change underneath the stage, and how, maybe that your ego gets in the way, and that would be kind of irritating. But I remember just thinking, how cool is that?
Right.
Oh my God, like how wonderful that Madonna like she has her brother working with her on this show. I just thought that when I, seeing the two of them work together in Truth or Dare, I thought it was cool. Now I get that Christopher also got some yelling from her, because when she'd come off, like, as we know, we see in that scene in Truth or Dare, she's like, constantly complaining about the sound cutting out and why are
Right.
making Donna's this and that, blah, blah. Absolutely the all-time worst. And like, she's very high energy because of the show. So I'm assuming there was no filter for her when she comes off the stage and she's got he's her sounding board.
I don't think there was filter on her from day one. He was used to that. Let's keep it real.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know what you're signing up for when you're, you know, doing that type of job. But
I was thinking about something that Ben said about his influence on her, along with the other, you know, gay men in her life. You know, I totally agree that these people added to her gay sensibility, and she probably already had one on her own. But when, you know, she mentioned in, you know, her eulogy to her brother that, you know, he had great taste. And, you know, reading in his book when he was entrusted by Madonna to go to auctions to buy art for her because of his great taste. And most importantly, actually, when Moira McFarlane gave Madonna a painting and Christopher said, it's actually pretty good, you know? So
I'm glad somebody mentioned that. Yay.
There is the taste coming out, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think in that movie, that moment with Moira, Alec sort of puts her in a weird position to look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And whereas and then it's almost as if like Madonna is kind of making fun of her. But it changes that the moment that Christopher says that, because is that the painting? Like he's sort of already aware that she was going to give Madonna that painting, and they're admiring it. And I remember when you see it, you're like, I remember thinking as a teenager watching it, I'm thinking, okay, that does kind of look good. Why are they making fun of Moira? Right. And then Christopher says that, and you're like, okay, so they are respecting her.
But also as siblings, they probably have made fun of the McFarlanes for decades, you know?
Right.
I was going to say, he probably knew her. And so for him to take that moment of pause, they even captured on camera. He's standing in front of it and he does this, and then he kind of shifts his weight. He goes, actually, it's pretty good. And the tone of his voice changes. And it exemplified a kindness and an honesty.
Yeah.
And what does she do after he says that? She comes over and looks at it, right?
Yeah.
So it's that, and you can only get that kind of honest energy with siblings, because they know all your dirty and your goody. So
well, no, also, but it's that she respects his taste so much, you know, like she almost as if she looks to him like, is it okay? Should I like it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think. Also with siblings, like, I have a younger sister, and I think sometimes there's things that it's an unspoken language that you have with that sibling just because you grew up with them, where it's like you don't really have to say very much. It's like an eye wink or like a knowing look, and they get where you're at because you're sort of like on that same plane. But I think that's sort of what happens in that moment where, she respects him so much for his, she let him design her Upper West Side home, that apartment, which I wanted to call out. So for all you listeners, whenever Ricardo posts pictures in the mirror, that's her apartment. When she moved to the East Side, Ricardo stays in that West Side apartment that she bought. And that design, I'm assuming all of that stuff that you see in the background is from Christopher, from when he designed the house.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where, like, if you want to get an idea of the interior design work that he's done for her, you can catch glimpses of it when Ricardo shows that apartment. So you don't get to see much of it, but if you look in the background, it's little glimpses. So, obviously, then he did the 12-inch single for Like a Prayer, which I always thought was so fascinating. And I loved the thing that I loved the most about that was it was MLVC, and then the P from Penn,
was
because they were getting divorced, was like sort of down below, like it had fallen off. And I always loved that little, I wondered how much she was involved in sort of the concept of that, or if he just created that all by himself,
I bet
also,
he created that.
Yeah.
That was his
the other,
commentary on what happened as an artist.
also
Mhm.
something that I always really admired, and God, I could wish I could get my hands on one of them, are the t-shirts she wore in Blonde Ambition where she's backstage. Those are all designed by Christopher.
Oh.
Mhm. Oh, I'm sure they must be somewhere out
Mhm.
there.
Remember the one with the gold bars on it? And
Oh, yeah.
if you, all of them, because I think it was mentioned in the book, but I think she mentioned it in an interview at some point too, where she's like, "Oh yeah, my brother designed all these shirts for me."
Yeah,
They're in the
because I mean,
vault.
as art director, he would have his hands on all of that, like from
Hmm.
merch to yeah, everything. He went from art director for Blond Ambition to tour director for Girlie Show. So he goes from, and so art directors, oversee the visual aspects of the project. So that's a part of it, but not directing the show. And so for Girlie Show, he even took a bigger position in that. And I think it's interesting to see the difference between Blonde Ambition to Girlie Show and to see his involvement in that. And it's like there are some similarities in terms of format, but I love knowing that was his creation, because I do feel like Girlie Show got shortchanged. Blonde Ambition got all the attention because of the movie, and
Yeah.
Right.
and it was sort of like the first show to be like that. And then Girlie Show had such a small run in the US that it didn't really get much publicizing here. But not that it's superior to Blonde Ambition, but I feel like it sort of it builds upon Blonde Ambition and becomes even more
Yeah.
complex and more in depth on certain things.
No, that's a good way of putting it, because I feel like Blonde Ambition was fan service. It was Immaculate Collection come to life on stage, correct? And Girlie Show was very conceptual. It was probably in Madonna and Christopher's mind the entire show. There's a lot of numbers that are not necessarily made for the public. They're just made statements, on stage. Specifically the Beast Within interlude, but then I'm also thinking about when Madonna came out and did Like a Virgin. This is probably the first time in her career where she's like, I'm going to fuck with everybody. They want to hear Like a Virgin. I'm going to give them Like a Virgin, And it kind of fell flat on its face, but at the same time, it was a chance that she was willing to take because she felt, I guess along with her brother, they felt secure enough with her fame and her influence that they could do anything. And they did. I mean, the vampires, in Justify My Love, that was, I'm sure everyone was like, well, no one wants to see you lip sync for 20, for 15 minutes on stage dancing this whole thing. And she's like, I don't care. I want to do it anyway. Right.
Right.
It's interesting you say that, because I rewatched Girlie Show way more than Blonde Ambition. Don't hate me.
No, it's great.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. That's my jam. Oh my God.
I think it's just much more artistically free because at that point she had been through so much that honestly there is nothing else left to lose, and you can go as hard, as balls to the wall as you want, creatively speaking, because nothing else is there that people could take away from her. So
imagine having the balls to say, I'm not going to tour the US. I don't have to.
Right.
That
was our punishment. That was our punishment for not treating erotica well. Radio banned erotica. It just barely got played.
I was going to say, don't say
did.
we.
No, it was
say everybody else.
No, for us,
I bought like 3 copies and played it nonstop.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I always remember back in college when Bedtime Stories, the album came out, which almost
next week,
next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When Bedtime Stories came out, and I would play Bedtime Story, the song, over and over and over and over again. Like if you knew me, you heard that song. So much so that I had friends who thought Bedtime Story, the single, was this enormous popular song played everywhere, because they were like, I hear it all the time. Stefan's always playing it. So they just assumed Bedtime Story, the song, was this enormous hit for Madonna. So they were rather surprised when they would hear that it wasn't. But that was a testament to my fandom when I was in college, because I was like always playing, like same thing, like Ray of Light. When Ray of Light was big, but like I played it like even more. Like it was on MTV all the time. I would play it like 50 times between MTV. Anyway, I digress. Back to Christopher. Did anyone see his shoes? The shoe wear?
No, I was going to ask you guys about that. I've never seen that collection, but I
Has
remember
anyone in the
speaking about
chat,
it.
any listeners have? I was
Maybe.
thinking, I'm like, that would be a great find, like almost like finding the desperately seeking Susan boots. Like, I want to know if like the Ciccone collection shoes are out there. And like, what kind of shoes were they?
Right. I remember the Truth or Dare, the Madonna's collection. She had shoes, but I didn't
right.
even know that Christopher did.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find that. If anybody owns a pair of Christopher's Ciccone collection shoes, please drop us a DM. I'd be thrilled to see what they look like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
They have a Twitter
The
that
shoes?
hasn't been that hasn't been updated since 2013.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's.
Oh, those are hot. I would wear those.
What do they look like, Ben? Are they?
They're like a Chelsea boot, but it's like patent leather with like red and orange and like a strange little strap across it. I would actually wear those now.
Okay,
we're gonna go with the dark. They fit in with the Doc Martens revival.
That's kind of like Beetlejuice-esque from what I can tell on Tony's phone.
There's a lot of it's very.
Oh, it's tough to see. It's blurry.
Yeah, we can't see them.
Oh, I see. Oh, like a wingtip with some blue, like a true blue wingtip. There we go. All right. Well, we're not gonna Google
the
search
rest of them
this now,
look like boxing sneakers. Yeah, so you can tell there's a very like specific influence to each pair.
Very Girlie Show.
Yeah, well, you could say that.
Well, that's fun. Okay, we're going to eBay this afterwards and find out if. I thought one of another lovely tribute for Christopher came from Christopher Childers, who we had on the show. Christopher Childers obviously is one of the dancers from Girlie Show, and it was very hush hush when Girlie Show was happening, but they had dated, and Christopher Childers had posted about it. I just thought he had posted some fun pictures from during that time.
They were beautiful, and I thought that was where I think I commented some sacred memories for him, and I was very appreciative actually of a lot of people's pictures that they shared. That Debbie Mazar and Nikki Harris and just
right. There were like photos we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Just that they were willing to share them, because I think that's things that you keep private because you do deserve that. You do deserve some privacy in your life, regardless of your fame or the job that you have. And so I felt very privileged that we could see those.
Yeah, for sure. It is. It's a gift to be able to get to see those things. And it's nice to also see how many lives he touched and how much he meant to everyone.
Truly.
And I think one of the things that I was most happy about, the silver lining on that, was reading in Madonna's tribute that they were able to sort of
reconnect,
come back together and get past whatever animosity or whatnot. I mean, I thought that one of the most heartbreaking lines in that tribute was, "I kept him alive as long as I could," which that just broke me, because I was like, she's, spending money to try and do whatever she can. And
well, we've heard that before, right? With Keith and Christopher and Martin, and like that's.
But I love
it's a very Leo way of expressing love.
Yeah, but I love that she sort of keeps that private, like she doesn't feel the need to flaunt that. Like, look at what I'm doing. I'm, because when his book came out, everyone was salacious, and all the rags were taunting about it, and like people feed off of drama, and they just love to see other people tear each other down and be angry towards each other. And I think, who knows? Maybe Madonna said, "You want to make some money? Write a book about us. I'll let it go." You never know what goes on behind people.
She never went on the record about his book. However, Liz Rosenberg did respond or reply and say something like, "I don't think Madonna's read it, and I don't think she ever will." And but that's not Madonna's voice.
Yeah. maybe it was a way for her to help him, because it was a best-selling book. He got tons of money off of it. So, but yeah, it was just sweet. It was sweet to see that she was there in a time of need for him and to help him out. And I thought it was, such a testament to who she is.
Right. And that you mentioned that she's never used that as sort of like a talking point to like the way that people have torn her down over the years. She very easily could say, yes, but I XYZ, I send all this money to cancer research. I do all of these philanthropic things. She doesn't have, again, as I said, every single person deserves a measure of privacy, whoever you are. I hope she's in a safe place wherever she is.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, anything in the comments or chat or people?
Just everybody sort of echoing the very same sentiments that we're talking about, just the humanity of it all and siblings. And although somebody mentioned, I had forgotten about this, that she posted the photo of his tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
And that felt like it was the most personal.
It really did. I thought that was a very unusual picture for us to be able to see. It reminded me of like photos that I've taken but never shared of relatives in that sort of position where you take the picture, but it's just for you. Yeah. It's not something that you would share. And I mean, the whole concept, and I guess I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, I don't know why I'm so emotional, but it's what do we keep private these days, and how do we manage in a world of very public, constant access to people's lives? How do you curate what you want to share and what you don't want to share? And then in that case, then why share anything at all? Because there was a time when we took pictures and really we knew that the only people who would see it would be us and the people that those pictures got eventually handed down to. It's just not like that anymore. It really reminds you of how your existence is kind of small in the world, in the face of, but we feel like we have so much more power. I don't know. It's just
small and fleeting. I think that's pictures are. We think posting them on Instagram, everyone's going to see them and know us and be part of our life. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's gone in a second.
But to Liberty's point, right? Like, and I'm thinking about this a lot. Okay, I'm going to try not to get emotional now, Liberty. God damn it.
I'm sorry.
I like went to visit my family yesterday and was down on the farm, and like I couldn't go through the photo albums again. Like the last couple times I was there, I spent some time with them, and it really makes me think about how humans record their history and like how we keep memory of ourselves. And I think about it a lot since I've turned 50, and I'm like, oh crap, I've forgotten more than I remember at this point, right? Like I've forgotten more things than I actually remember. And so it's actually become important to me to take, especially because we have the technology to do it, right? To take more pictures without the thought that, oh, I have to post it. I just want them, right?
Yeah.
But then it is fun because we used to have photo albums where we would put the pictures and we would get them out when people would come over and be like, oh my God, you have to, or we'd have remember for years and years in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, you'd have like, just like the packets with all the 3x5s, right? And you'd go through them when you would see people that you hadn't seen for a little while. And now you can see those people every day on these things. But you're right, Liberty, that there's still like, there's both the curation and then it's not really the choice, but like the degree, I think, is what you were touching on. And I think about that a lot, as has been on my mind since yesterday, like what that means. And then when something like this happens with well-known people, and we get that glimpse into how they experience that, which then of course it makes you reflect on how you experience that and what that means. And no, I appreciate you saying that, because it's really an important sort of huge human thing that we all have to think about these days.
Well, and also consider that there, Christopher's in hundreds of photos with Madonna, public photos and memorial. He's in Truth or Dare, and he's thumbprint or fingerprints are all over so much of the creative endeavors she's had. I hope that there are many photos that we've never seen and maybe never will, that she's able to separate from, oh, here's a photo of us dancing at this party, or here's a photo with me as goth Donna, and he's, I hope she has other photos that she can go through and be like, oh, what a silly goose he was, or gosh, his taste was incredible. Obviously, she maybe can look around her former apartment or her other apartment and say he's still here. But I think also it's really awesome just how much his fingerprints are all over. So some very crucial moments in her life that we can't stop talking about today, 34 years later. That's insane to me. Beautiful
and wonderful too. I think that must make her so proud.
Hopefully,
to know, I think that's the one thing from a human condition that we love the most is, when people we were a part of our lives, when they pass on, to, if there's something about them, like a song or a movie that comes on, and that's the person you think of, that's them. They're there, they're with you.
Well, it's also, I think it was you, Stefan, that mentioned earlier about that she talked about that they had reconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And that struck me in that, because with Madonna and as Madonna fans, we have seen her maintain these sort of lifelong friendships and connections, right? Like with Debbie and Rosie, and the friendship she had with people who didn't make it, and sort of like the arc of that, it's sort of inspirational in its own, because we all know how difficult it is to maintain a friendship over a sustained period of time, and then to be that famous and still do it.
Yeah.
And just to know that they could have that gap and then reconnect is very, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Oh my God. Cathartic and heartening at the same. Yeah. It's okay, even as you go into your second and third act, you can still see these things sort of making the loop of time. And that part really hit me hard.
Yeah, for those, I don't know if I had mentioned this on the show before, maybe I did, when we were organizing the Girlie Show 30th anniversary reunion for last year, one of the big questions that I was dealing with Christopher Childers and some of the other participants was, would we be able to get Christopher Ciccone on the show, because that was his, he was such a big part of that tour. And unfortunately, because he was dealing with his cancer, he was just not feeling well enough to be able to participate. But if you do watch the Girlie Show reunion, there is a moment where Christopher texts Nikki Harris while we're on the air, because he knew when we were doing it, because I put him on all of the emails, just so, in case he felt well enough to participate. But so even though he did not appear on screen, I loved that he was still he said hello during the reunion.
That's so amazing.
So it's nice that he was had a small part of that reunion, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But
and they all kept in touch.
Yeah.
Think about that too. That all those people from that tour keep in touch, even though they were in that Zoom and they were like, oh, I saw you, but they kept in touch. Like, yeah, wow. Yeah. There's almost something aspirational about that.
For sure.
Like, because I know how hard it is to like keep in touch with people, and especially because the technology makes it feel like it's easier, but honestly, I think it makes it more difficult because we don't have to like go see them now or be on the phone for like 3 or 4 hours on a Thursday night getting caught up, right? Like you're like texting and sending pictures, and it feels like an immediacy that it's not. And so it was heartening to see all of them on the Zoom and talking, and him texting. And I was struck by that when we were doing that. I was like, wow, they have held on to that flame, like the ember of it, for all this time, 30 years. That's so impressive.
Well, and I think also they're also of a generation that handles all of the tech part of communicating differently than maybe we do, and perhaps a phone call or an actual face-to-face visit is more their speed, and they've worked harder at it. I admit that late 70s born me I love texting because it's much quicker, and I don't have to like engage or feel as much or as in comparison to like, you know, the emotional part of seeing each other face to face. So, yeah, I much favor the old, let's go get coffee sometime, and then never actually getting the coffee. That's not good. It's not good. Don't do that, kids.
Yeah.
I think that's an important. That's our takeaway from today is reach out to your friends, reach out to your loved ones.
Go see the people that mean something to you.
Yeah,
like in the deepest true way. And yeah, like my gal pal that's been my Madonna ride or die for 20 plus years. Like we went on a walk this morning, and it's
beautiful.
Just like, yeah. Well,
sorry,
I'm getting all emotional.
I don't want to bring it. I don't want to bring it down. But like when summer was ending, somebody had said, if you think about it in terms of how fleeting things are, like think about how, you know, where we're at in our life and how many summers you get. So like, how many more summers do I have left to experience? You know, like 30, 35. You know, like when you put it like that, it sounds so, you know, like or like visiting friends or visiting family. Like how often do you see people? Do you see them once a year? So in that case, what you only going to see them 30 more times? You know, like when you put it to a number like that, it sounds so finite and so like, oh my God, like now there's an urgency to see each other. So yeah, so let's make a point that somehow the four of us can go get together in a room and have a little
really
Madonna.
Have to. We
like
really have
somehow. I don't know how it will happen, but if we can make it happen, it'd be wonderful because this is lovely to do, but it's not the same as when we're in person, you know?
No, it would be so nice.
The eventual celebration tour film premiere, okay?
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
There we go. That's a good idea.
Oh my God. We can dream.
Wasn't it like January 2025? Is that what someone said?
Well, that's what we're hoping. Yeah. It needs to be an event, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap. We're going to close on that because I know we all have to go to bed. It's school night.
It is a school night.
Yeah. So everyone, thanks for joining us because, and I hope this was as beneficial to you as I felt it was for me because it is. Not that we know these people. They're not our friends or our family, but I feel like, you know, it's time. You're invested in them because of how much time of where they were and how, you know, I mean, like 40 years, I feel like I've known of Madonna's brother almost.
Sure.
So,
well, not only that, but just you celebrate your friends' artistic or your family's artistic like stuff because it's just how cool is that you get to be around when they do something so cool, and if they're part of the fabric of your story, that's even cooler. But
Agreed.
celebrate.
Well, remember, everybody, you can find us on Instagram, X, and Threads at MLVC Podcast. If you'd like to donate to the show, we're on Venmo at MLVC Podcast, or click that like button on YouTube, and you can donate via Super Thanks. If you've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, click that subscribe button so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Remember, nothing really matters. Love is all you need. You three stick around for a second. We're going to kiki a little off the air. That's our privacy. Is
There you go.
We chat offline.
Don't worry, everybody. We're just taking a bunch of selfies to get one good one.
That's right. That's what it actually is.
All right. Until next time, everybody. Take care.
Ciao.